All right, the Dogs and Cox are getting ready to play in Columbia. I'm going to talk to you about what this game means when you watch it for Georgia, because I've talked to y'all a lot about the weeks that we've had. These first 2 weeks of football have been really important for a lot of different reasons. You had Georgia and Oregon playing in the first game of the year. You had, I mean, Tech and Clemson. That was a preview into that. Notre Dame, Ohio State. I didn't think that the second week would teach us more about that game than the first, but whatever. And then, I said multiple times talking about Alabama and Texas and how after week two we would be able to tell, just where everybody is. It's in the top of college football. We have learned a lot, and we will continue to learn things. I didn't think we would learn what we learned, which is that the top teams are susceptible to losses. If we didn't already know that with Ohio State, the way they played against Notre Dame, we know it now. If we didn't know that about Alabama, we know it now. I don't know if we know that about Georgia yet. It looks like you'd rather have a more dominant performance, I guess, against Samford. But this week now, you're starting to kind of get into where the top teams, we're going to really learn a lot, I think, about teams that are maybe borderline. But I think for borderline top 10 coming into things, you got Tennessee survived so far, Miami, Texas A&M, and Miami is a team that's knocking on the front door of a top 10 game. Vanderbilt is playing at Northern Illinois, which makes no sense, but whatever. But Georgia going to South Carolina, just a little bit like LSU hosting Mississippi State. These are divider games, and for the Dogs, I'm not going to shy away from. I think they are going to really destroy South Carolina. I don't say that a lot. I'm old enough and have been to this game enough to know that you don't just snap your fingers and South Carolina rolls over and dies. But there's a couple of reasons why I think that Georgia is going to really have a solid game against the Chickens. First of all, they did not play offensively. They did not close the way that they wanted to. What would the narrative be out there right now if Georgia had not scored 7 touchdowns in a row against Oregon, but they had mixed in some field goals instead? I mean, a 33-3 win over Oregon is not as impressive as 49-3. And so a week ago, with Samford, it wasn't it was not exactly what you wanted. On the offensive side of the ball, it's hard to argue with Georgia's defense right now. I think one thing that we've missed out on so far is that Georgia's defense is better. Excuse me, is better than people expected. They're not better than they were a season ago. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION. This is it's something you're missing out on if you do not own it. And I know how many people watch our channel, and it's tens of thousands. We've not sold tens of thousands of these books. Make sure you're picking this up today. The link is down below. I do want to make sure that y'all are aware that it's at Red Zone in Athens, which is on Clayton Street. Get to the arch, you go up the hill, take a left at Mrs. Heary's, and you'll see the red zone on your left with the flags. They've got a ton of gear in there. It is well worth your time to go there. Tell them that Dean sent you. 118, excuse me, 100 and 127 yards total. That included a pretty bad sack for Stetson in it. So Georgia was efficient, but I was talking with someone I talked to a lot about Georgia earlier today. And, you know, it's correct that you can't always really play well because you can't. And by the way, I mean, like, did they not play well? I mean, they didn't play as well as you would have liked. It wasn't a hey, Georgia's number one in the country and there's no question moment. That was really this past weekend more about what Alabama did than what Georgia did that week. But I think coming into the Carolina game, you are gonna be. I want to check, and I'll check it right now as we talk through this. But this is a national television game, and there's just not a lot of there's just not a lot of good games on while Georgia's going to be on. You've got Cincinnati, Miami of Ohio. That's on ESPN. No one's going to watch that. Oklahoma, Nebraska. I mean, my suspicion, even though that's on big television, on Big Fox and network television, and even though Michigan is on against UConn, Georgia, Carolina is going to probably outdraw those guys at noon. And for cable to outdraw broadcast at noon, that's not. I mean, that's a pretty big discrepancy for cable. And if you're wondering what the SEC is going to look like in the future on television on ABC, what you're seeing this week is a starting point for that, which would be Georgia, South Carolina at noon on ABC. Then you would have something like Penn State at Auburn at ABC at 3 or 4, and then at night you would have Miami at Texas A&M. That's going to be what the future will be on ABC. That will be, Miami A&M would be a primetime game on ABC. I have to say, if they had to pick it over again, you might see Georgia in prime time, but I do think Georgia has a pretty good chance of winning the weekend here at noon, and maybe just winning the weekend period, which you don't see a lot with Georgia, South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina is not a television draw. Clemson is not really a television draw. These are not, Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. These are not marquee games. And Oklahoma, Nebraska, that should win the weekend. We're just gonna see, aren't we? Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it will. But anyway, I think they're going to have a lot of people watching this game, and it's going to be, Georgia to me has something to prove in this moment, where they are the number one team in the country according to the media. The coaches poll is closer than that, but it has Alabama as the one. I actually don't know which one's closer, but it's split. And I think this is the week where Georgia could take the number one spot if it goes out and does what it's supposed to do, which is win this game something like 30-3 or 40-10. That's what we should be seeing from Georgia. A season ago against South Carolina, they did not play super great, and they ran away from Carolina. I mean, Carolina definitely fought Georgia in Athens that week. I mean, that was a week after UAB. Georgia was 40-13. I think you could see something like that this year. I do not think South Carolina is in the same universe as Georgia, and I think it's really cool that Georgia a season ago was the 32-point favorite. They're on the road now and going to be a 24, 25-point favorite on the road in the SEC. It's tempting not to take South Carolina, frankly. That's just a lot of points for a home team to be eating. But South Carolina was only down 14-6 going into the stretch of the second quarter. Georgia was not really playing great offensively. Stetson had that interception. I don't know if you remember that or not. But all of a sudden there were some mistakes from South Carolina, and then boom, Georgia was up 23-6. The game was over before they headed into the half, and 26-6, up 20 points going into the half. That's a lot in any SEC game, and I think South Carolina, having watched them a few times now, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Georgia's defense outscores South Carolina. Carolina has not been their offensive line is not what you want right now. And for all of our talk, generally speaking, about you know about how Georgia's defense is going to have to reload, etc. Um, they really are getting the job done on the defensive side of the ball. And I think, for South Carolina, which is ranked, let me not get this wrong, 125th in run game. that is really not going to work against Georgia. And we can talk about all sorts of things, whatever we want, but one of the reasons why Carolina kind of jumped on top of Georgia State was because of blocked punts, easy enough for me to say, and Georgia's plus 1.5 on average in terms of turnover game. That's not the end of the world. South Carolina is at -2 right now. I mean, you're talking about a pretty big discrepancy there, and that's why I think it's possible, considering the quarterback and his, he is a little loosey goosey with the ball for me. You can't average 2 turnovers a game. It's not going to work. And Georgia's been pretty good in the turnover margin game. I mean, they're +3. Carolina's -4. Is that a big deal? Yeah, it's a problem. It's a concern. And that's how upsets happen. And when you're on the wrong side of that, that's how you get your butt whipped. That's what that is. So I like Georgia big, and I think this is a moment where they can show the country, because they're going to kind of go away for a little bit. This game, and then they're going to play Kent State. Nobody's going to pay attention to that. And then they're going to get Auburn, which is going to be a game that's probably going to be on CBS, probably. Excuse me, excuse me, I misspoke. They're going to play Kent State. Then they're going to go to Middle Earth to play Missouri. And no one's going to pay attention to those 2 weeks. They're just not going to. Missouri is not good. So this is a big moment in time. You have the Oregon game, you're going to have the Carolina game, and then you're going to have Auburn. People aren't going to pay attention to when Georgia's playing Kent State, Samford, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. They're just not going to. So if you're going to try to build up what what people think of you, which may matter or may not, I don't know, but now's the time to do it, and this is a marquee game to do that.